Modern day relationships, especially in the West, have become extremely difficult to maintain. Everyone I know seems to be having some sort of issue when it comes to relationships, whether it be maintaining the current relationship they have, whether it be finding a relationship that makes sense for them. So everyone's having some sort of struggle when it comes to relationships. Now, to me, it's pretty obvious why that's the case. Times have changed. We live in a very new society that we have to adapt to. And so you have to understand why relationships are not working and then use that to evolve to this new man that you should become in order to make relationships work. Or, of course, you can choose the path that I've chosen, which for the time being is to remain single and to enjoy the presence of multiple beautiful women until I find the right woman to come across, who I'll probably choose to be a life partner of mine and someone that I'll choose to eventually have children with. But again, I don't know exactly what I want because I'm trying to adapt to this new world that we live in as well. So I'm not saying that I know exactly what the right way to go is. I'm enjoying my life and I suggest you do exactly the same thing in yours. But everyone I seem to speak to, and I was out at dinner last night with a bunch of guys a little bit older than I am, and they were saying, just broken up with their girlfriend and they can't seem to make it work, or she's just left them and everyone they know is not having a good time in terms of their relationships. And I think to myself, well, all of this stuff is actually pretty obvious, right? There's a reason why relationships have become so extremely difficult. The first thing is we've just got a shit ton of options. You live in a big city like London, you'll be on Bumble, you'll be on Hinge, you'll be on Tinder. So if something doesn't work with her, then you'll find someone else. Now, if she's a good-looking girl and she's tired of your ass, and she just jumps on the dating apps, she's got an insane number of options. Insane number of options. So she can just simply switch the apps on, and then she's got a bunch of other guys that want to take her out to dinners, that want to take her to clubs, buy her bags, and do all sorts of silly shit that men do for women these days, because we have a shit ton of simps, and when you are in cities like London, you tend to be around wealthy men who can afford to take a woman to nice places. So the first problem is options. People just simply have a shit ton of options in today's day and age. And therefore, they are less willing to compromise and less willing to sacrifice for their other half. So if something pisses them off, then they immediately just move on to the next person, right? You have no patience to spend time on someone and to say, oh, don't worry, baby, we'll work this out together. It's more like, well, fuck it. It hasn't worked now. I've had a little argument. You've pissed me off. On I go. I've got other options anyway. That's the first problem, okay? First problem is plethora of options that both sexes have, especially if they're good looking. Especially if she's a good looking girl, she will have an insane number of options. The second thing I would say, the reason why relationships just don't seem to work anymore is because if you look at the kind of world we now live in, we live in a very individualistic society. People are selfish, people only care about themselves, people don't really give a shit about others. They care, and they're taught to care about their own mental health, right? This whole self-care environment that we live in, which I'm all for, by the way. Of course, you should absolutely care about yourself, and you how you feel is the most important. However, you don't seem to care how other people feel. You only care about how you feel, right? So it's this level of selfishness, so selfish emotions. Women, men, we're all the same. We don't give a shit about how others feel. We care about how we feel. If we're not happy in a relationship, we'll be like, bye, I'm moving on. This just isn't working for me. And it's all a very me situation. I remember doing a video in Miami where I talked about the fact that we've created a narcissistic society. We've literally created a society of narcissists. And don't just blame women for this. Men are also the same, right? If you're a handsome man, you've got a bit of money, even if you're not a handsome man and you don't even have money, you're still selfish. You're still taught to care for your own needs. And it doesn't matter how others feel or how they think or how they treat you. How you feel seems to be more important than, strangely enough, how others treat you. If someone treats you well, but you don't feel right around them, especially the case with women, because women are much more emotionally driven, then she'll just break up with you because she doesn't feel like you're the right person for her. So, look, again, we've got options is a massive issue. We've got this whole idea of like mental health and being selfish and being individualistic, which, especially in the West, the more and more time goes on, the more individualistic we have become as a society. So no wonder relationships are breaking down. You only care about yourself and you've got a shit ton of options. Now, the third and final thing I would say is living a life of independence. Everyone wants to be independent. Everyone wants to travel. You're urged to travel alone and go to beautiful places. Everyone wants to start their own businesses, make their own money. They're starting to wake up and realize that society doesn't really give a shit about them, and that they should, formulate their own plans and live their own life and write their own story. And so we're less willing to sacrifice for others, right? Writing your own story means that having a girlfriend and traveling around Thailand sounds very boring. So it would just make more sense to travel around Thailand single, right? It's just not as exciting doing it with a girlfriend. Similarly with her, she might think to herself that she's been with you for a long time in her young age, and now all of a sudden she's decided that she wants to go traveling. She wants to explore herself. She wants to meet other men. She hasn't been single for so long, so she wants to enjoy her life. So this idea of like freedom and travel and going somewhere new and being alone and not being told what to do. I like switching hands when I'm doing this because my hands get pretty tired holding the phone. I need to do more shoulder exercises. But ultimately, this level of freedom, go where you want, travel and travel alone and go to beautiful places and, oh, I'm restricted, I feel very restricted. You're restricting me. Everything's very restrictive when you're with someone, right? So people want their freedoms and their independence. And that's the reason why relationships are becoming so difficult to maintain. Because we also find it extremely difficult to allow people their freedoms when we are with them, right? So if your woman wants to go on holiday to Miami or to Vegas, rightfully so, you ought to question why they're going to Miami. I'll tell you that. After me living in Miami for many years, be careful letting your woman go to Miami on a hen do or a bachelorette party. But ultimately, the freedom that people want, the options, the fact that you can always find someone better, means we're not willing to fight for our existing relationships. I'll find someone better. If this doesn't work, on to the next. And that's simply why relationships just don't seem to work in modern day society. So I hope you can make it work on your side, because I certainly haven't seen many reference points that I look up to where people are making relationships work and they're making it work successfully.